Alright guys, welcome back to class. In the previous section we looked at how to set up our VAT, and which we discussed extensively on that. So if you have not grasped that, just watch that video a couple of times again and you will understand what we did there. Now in this section we are going to be looking at how to enter our inventory item into the system. What do I mean? When you enter the inventory item, you have to enter the cost, you have to also enter the selling price. Now, but there are a couple of things we'll have to take note of when entering our inventory items. And in the previous section, when we talk about the VAT, there is something I actually prepared, right? But I forgot to go through it, or I forgot to tell us how the VAT actually works. Now, this is one of the things we need to actually know about VAT and how it operates. Now, when it comes to value added tax, right, by definition, value added tax is tax on consumption. What it means is that when you buy something that you are selling, you are charged VAT on that item, right? And when you are selling that thing to the next customer, who probably is the final consumer also charge VAT. The final consumer bear the burden of the whole VAT that has been paid on that. So let's look at this scenario that I prepared here. Now this is a simple scenario that will drive home the idea of VAT, right? The idea of VAT. Now when you look at this, you will see that from inception, in fact, every product or every service, every product has an inception, and the inception starts from the raw material. Now when you buy a raw material from a farmer or a distributor, a manufacturer, a raw material, right? Now the person charge you VAT, and the person is selling the item for 1,200 and charge you 7.5% VAT, which is now the VAT output to the person, right, which is 90 naira. So this is the VAT remittable to the government by the person. Now you as a manufacturer that's converting those raw material into something finished goods, right, and you sold the same item, right, to another customer, and you are selling it at 1,500 and you charge your own 7.5% on that, which is going to be 1,100, which is going to be 112 naira 5 kobo. But remember that you have already paid 90 naira on that. So that 90 naira you paid, you will have to deduct it, and you remit 22.5 naira to the government. That is another thing, because you have paid the VAT input to the manufacturer. And why are you deducting this 90 naira? You are deducting this 90 naira because you are not the final consumer. You are also selling that to another person. Now if that other person is the final consumer, the person bear the burden of paying this 112 naira that you paid, but you on your own end, this 90 naira you have paid earlier on is a tax credit to you, because you are still going to claim it at the end of the day. And that is what you did. You claim it here and you are remitting this balance. Now you now sold to this distributor. The distributor now sold this to a retailer at 2,000 naira and charged his own 7.5%, which is now 150 as VAT output, but he has already paid 112 naira 5 kobo on that item. So he also going to deduct that amount, and he's going to pay 37.5 kobo on that. Now if the distributor now sold that to a retailer, right, this is what he charged for the retailer, and the retailer now who is now going to sell to the final consumer, right, the retailer who is going to sell to the final consumer is selling as 2,500 now, and he's going to charge his own 7.5%, which is now going to be 187.5 naira as VAT. Now because the retailer has already paid 150 as VAT on that, he's going to deduct that from here, then has this balance. Now at the end of the day, one person bear the burden of all these tax. Now look at it. From here to this place, this is what the VAT process looks like. These are the VAT remittable, but this is actually what has been remitted or will be remitted to the government. This 187.5, because at each stage of production or consumption, right, everybody pays that VAT. But at the end of the day, who bears the most burden of that, we say, is the final consumer, because the final consumer is the only person that pays this 187 naira at the end of the day. You can see it here. This is what we have here. So when you add all this up, it will give you 187 naira 25 kobo. That's what we have here, and that is what the consumer is paying at the end of the day. So that is basically how VAT works, right? That's basically how VAT works. It is a VAT charge on consumption of goods and services, right? The final burden of the tax fall on the consumer. So that is what we have it to be, on the consumer. The consumer pays this final amount. So that's how the VAT process will work. Now what I want us to look at is how to set up our inventory item. And why I went back to talk about VAT, we will see that in effect later on when we start complying, or when we start applying our VAT rate and on our invoices and on our sales, right? We'll see how to claim those VAT credit in QuickBooks, and QuickBooks also take cognizance of that. Now when it comes to inventory item, we need to pay attention to certain things. I used to tell people, it is not the fact that you know how to operate an accounting application that automatically makes you a good accountant or it makes you a good business person. There are certain questions you need to be asking yourself. You know that even the people that make the VAT laws don't want to pay VAT. In fact, they don't want to pay the tax. Even the people making the tax laws don't want to pay the tax. So most of the times when a customer is buying something from you and you told the customer, okay, this amount, this is what I sell this product, let's say I sold it for 1,000 naira, and at the end of the day when the customer comes to check out and you're telling the customer that, oh, you will have to pay 1,300 naira plus VAT, that is what makes you want that. So the customer will say, why didn't you tell me this at the first place? So most time, especially in Nigeria, right, we try to incorporate that VAT into the selling price, so that when I tell you that the selling price is 1,000 naira, and when you come to check out, the selling price should be actually 1,000 naira. But either way, it is not always the case, especially right now that everybody is fully aware of what the tax system is looking like, right? But in this class, I'm giving you the options to either do any of them. Now, when it comes to inventory item, you need to ask yourself questions, series of questions. How do you want to calculate your VAT? We have what is called VAT inclusive and VAT exclusive, right? Now, this is just a term. It is not like a law, right? What it means by VAT inclusive is that in the selling price of your product, you have actually factored in the VAT in it. Now if you look at the instance I gave here, now this is the selling price plus VAT, right? That's why I said it's VAT inclusive. Now it is 12,500, 14,500 and 13,000. So it means that all this value here have VAT, that have that 7.5% VAT included in them. Now this is going to be a problem, because if I just enter this amount in QuickBooks will actually not know whether this VAT is included or excluded, because I don't have that option there. So what I will need to do in this case is to set up a VAT rate, set up an amount that when I apply the VAT rate, it will actually give me exactly 12,500, which is what we are going to do. But it is an option, right? It's an option. If you do it that way, it becomes easier for people to track all your VAT easily without you actually calculating it manually again. And I always recommend that when you are doing it, there is no point of having a system that can do something automatically for you then then you at the end of the day you have to go back and start recalculating. No, this is called a QuickBooks. It's called an accounting system. It's a software for a reason. It should be able to automate some processes for you. All you need to do in this case, when you have a system like this, is to just apply the rate and do your plus and minus to get your VAT input and VAT output. Then you are good to go. And if you set it right, QuickBooks will do the calculation of your VAT output automatically. That is just it. Then later on you can now do your VAT input and you get your values, and that is simple as that, right? Especially now that Nigeria is now moving into more complex VAT system, like when we talk about the e-invoicing, which we are going to come to that, maybe not in this class, right? If you want to know more about the Nigerian tax law, I also have a course on that, and I can give it to you because we are in this class. I will give it to you at a discounted rate, right? You can join or chat me up and we'll discuss more on that. But in this case, let's go ahead and focus on what I am teaching you right here. Now, when you see, if you look at this table, like say we have the selling plus VAT, which means the VAT amount is included. That's why we have it as inclusive. Now, then we have the VAT selling price minus VAT. That's VAT exclusive. Now, if you look at these two things, they are actually the same value. They are actually the same price, right? What it means is that here I can add it in QuickBooks, and QuickBooks I will not add the VAT. QuickBooks will not track the VAT separately. I will have to be doing it manually. Then here I can add it. If I put these values on in the system, QuickBooks will be able to track these values and add the 7.5% on it, and I will have what I will have at the end of the day. I have 12,500. Now, what is the difference between this and this? Now, the difference between this and this is what is going to give me the VAT charge to total and to final consumer, which is now this. That's the difference between this and this. So this is the VAT that I will have to pay, or I have charged on this amount. So how did I do it? So I just get the 7.5. I calculated the 7.5 charge added here, and this is the value. This is the difference, right? I will actually send you this sheet, or in the platform you will have this sheet where I did the calculations, right? Now, at the end of the day, how much am I remitting to the government? At the end of the day, what I'm remitting to the government after every sales is this, but we are going to come to this later on more in detail. So in summary, what I'm trying to say, if you are setting up your VAT, you need to ask yourself, are you including the amount in the selling price, or you want to charge separately? Now, if you are including it in the selling price, that means if your product is sold at 12,500, then it should be 12,500. No VAT. No, you will not add VAT on it, because if you add VAT on this, that means VAT is going to be calculated anytime you make this sale. Is going to add 7.5% on this, which is no longer going to be 12,500, right? Then, but if it is VAT exclusive that you're putting in your system, then this is what you're going to have, because so that at the end of the day, when you add the item, when you add the VAT, it will now give you 12,500. So which one do I prefer? Right, I prefer this. I prefer adding my item in the system with the VAT exclusive rate, right? So that when I add the 7.5% VAT, it will calculate the item value for me. So without wasting much of our time again, let's look at how to apply this in real life, right? So when you open your QuickBooks, so if you open your QuickBooks like this, now how do we add inventory item? That's number one. So number one, you have to come to your inventory list. You have to come to your list here. You see your item list. Another way to do that is to come here. You see your inventory activity, new item. You click, right? You click new item, or you just come to your vendors and you click in item list. Now, when you click on item list, the only item we have available here is the VAT we added, right? Is the VAT we added. So to add new item, is either you come to your inventory list, you come to you come to your vendor inventory activity, then new items, or when you are already in your list here, item list here, you just click on this item below here where you're seeing item, this arrow. You click on it, you see new item, you see new, click on new, then it will give you this option. So when you are here, you will have to ask yourself again, what kind of item are you adding? Now, one beautiful thing about QuickBooks is that wherever you are, you always have options, you always have definition. There are things that QuickBooks is giving you definition of what that item is used for. Now, if you look at here, we are talking about service. Service type of item is service, and service is selected. So what did QuickBooks say? Service used for services you charge for or purchase, like specialized labor, consulting hours, or professional fees. Services, of course, services, you know what services is. Now we have inventory part, and you say use for goods you purchase, track as inventory, and resell. Now we have other items used for inventory item that you assemble from other inventory item and then resell. All these are languages, so you can just go ahead and choose the one that works for you. But basically in this class we are looking for inventory part item. Now use for goods we purchase, we track as inventory, and we sell or resell. So that is what we are looking for. So the first item we have, now you can choose to go with the name of the item or go with the number if you assign a number, right? So me, I choose to go with name. So because I have this already in my system or in Excel, I can just copy it and I'll paste the name right here, right? In your case, you have to type, right? In your case, you have to type. Now you have to also know, is this item a sub item? Does it have a sub item? Do you have a different category of item that you are going to put under here? If you do, you can click on sub item, then select the item head, and that is basically it. Now when that is done, then you put description. I like going with the name of the item, right? I like going with the name of the item. So when you now type the description here, the next question is, how much does it cost to buy this item? Now there is difference between cost and price. Now cost is the one that you pay to your vendor, while price is the one you charge to your suppliers, right? Price is selling price, cost is the cost you pay to acquire that item. So in this case, our cost of sales or the cost of the item is 12,000. So I'm going with this, so I can put this amount. Yeah, right. Now when I put this amount here, the next question is, which account do I want to track this cost on? So I want to track this cost on because I am dealing with what okay, I have not created an account for, I've not created cost of account for it, right? The account I have already here is for cost of goods sold, primer foods item, right? Not for drinks. All right, but I can choose to say, okay, I want this item to be charged here, I want the cost to be tracked here. I can just choose to go with that. Now if I have any preferred vendor that supply this item, I can choose the preferred vendor here, or I can enter the preferred vendor here. Now that is that on the cost. Now the next question is, how much am I charging for selling this item, right? We have already discussed that. I said if you are charging this amount, right, inclusive of VAT, then you can go ahead and collect and put this amount. Now if you save this item with this price, if you save this item with this price and you are saying that it is VAT inclusive, what it means is that you don't need to include this code VAT. You don't need to include this code VAT that you're seeing here. You have to say no VAT so that it will not charge VAT on it, but it will give you a double work. At the end of the period, you will have to calculate again what VAT was included here, right? What VAT was included here. Hey sir, you are making too much noise, can we see what you mean? Of course you are going to see what I meant. Now to do that, let's first of all save this item, right? We are going to save this item. Now then when you enter the amount, because VAT is included, I'm saying no VAT, so it's not going to track VAT again on that. But if I allow it to be with VAT, this is what happened, right? If I allow this code to be there, this is what happened. Now let me first of all select the income account. So the income account I'm going to select, I'm going to also select let's say I'm selecting this again because I'm using primer food cost of sales. So I'm going to select the revenue, right? These are items, these are chart of account we have already set. I'm just selecting the income account, right? So you can see it defined and pronounced here, income account. So I just select the income account. Now here we have, this is going to be by default. You don't need to touch anything here. It's going to be there by default. You don't need to touch anything, but you can add your own item if you want. You can add your own inventory account if you want, but by default you leave it there. So reorder point, at what point will this item reach for you to order or to reorder another? Maximum order quantity, how many will you order at this lowest point, right? The quantity at hand, do you have any quantity at hand? You can say yes. If you have quantity at hand, you can just type the quantity that you have at hand, then to calculate the value. Then as of what date, when was this company, when was this quantity available, you can select the date from here, right? Now for the sake of simplicity and explanation, for us to understand what I mean by VAT inclusive and VAT exclusive, let's go ahead and save this item, right? If I'm done filling this form, entering the details I need to enter about the item, I can go ahead and save. Now I have saved the item. You can see that it is now here. Now what happened? Now look at what happened. Now let's say I made a sale. Let's say I sold that item, right? What happened is that if I make sale of that item at that setting, what it's going to, yeah, you will see this because we have not added any quantity. No quantity is available. No problem. Just want to use it to illustrate something. So yeah, you will just find this if you have empty quantity. Now look at here. Look at below this place. Now instead of 12,500, we are now having 12,000. We are now having 13,437.50 as the value the customer is going to pay. But that is not what we meant by when we say the cost of this item is what is 12,000. That is not what we meant, right? That is not what we meant. So when you add the item, which is now, you are saying that the item cost is 12,500, but you are entering the item price is 12,500 plus VAT, but in your setting you are leaving the VAT, the 7.5% VAT active. So it's not going to actually how will I put this? It's not going to actually know that this item is VAT inclusive. So what you are seeing is that the VAT is now added. The 7.5% is added again on into the 7.5%. And when your customer look at it, he may say, you are a thief, you are this, you are that, because you added the value again in that. And this is not something we want QuickBooks to be doing, and we don't want our customers to complain or give us a bad image or a bad publicity. So we are saying that this is 7.5% inclusive of the VAT, and we want it to be exactly 12,500. So how do we mitigate this? How do we correct this, right? How do we correct this? So when you want to edit an inventory item, right, you just come back to your item list. Come back to your item list, just double click on it, now it will open. So it is also important for you to note at this point that the only changes you can make at this point is changes on the cost, on the name, on the selling price, and maybe probably on the accounts, right? Those are the changes you can make. But changes on quantity you cannot make again right here, right? I will show you how to do the changes on quantity later on. But for now, what we are trying to do is we are trying to say that this 12.5 is VAT inclusive. So how do we do that? So what we are going to do is to register or enter the VAT exclusive amount. Now the VAT exclusive amount is 11,000. The VAT exclusive amount is 11,627.91 naira. So that is the VAT exclusive rate, or that's the VAT exclusive amount, right? So this is actually the value we are going to enter, so that when we apply the 7.5%, it's going to give us 12,500. So I just hope you understand, and if you don't understand, please always rewatch and ask questions. So I will copy this value. In your own case, you have to calculate it, but I will send you this sheet in the platform so that you work with it. I'll send you this sheet in the platform so that you will work with it. Right, so let's go ahead. I'll copy this, and when you're doing this, you have to always make it in 5 decimal places. In 5 decimal places, right? You can see that it's more than 5 decimal places. That's why QuickBooks is giving me this option. So I will change this to 8. I'll make it 8. Then I'll change this value to 8. Then when I do that, I'll just save it. All right, so I have saved this item. Now what's happened if I make this sales or sell this item to a customer right now, and I put this? Yes, you always have this because there's no quantity available. Now you can see that it charged the 7.5%, which is 872, and at the end of the day I'm having 12,500. So that is basically what it means. So the customer knows that it is transparent that this 12,500 included this 872.09 kobo as VAT. As simple as that. When you are able to set up this item, you don't have any issues at the end of the day. So that is basically what it looks like, or how to set up inventory item and taking cognizance of your VAT, right? So in the next section, we are still going to enter these items, enter a couple of items, or as an assignment, you enter at least 5 inventory items and charge VAT on them, right? Enter 5 inventory items and charge VAT on them. So thank you very much, and see you in the next section.